Hi, and welcome to The Other Side. I'm Ember Hobie, and this week we are working step 3, trust in God. The key principle in step 3 is decide to turn your will and your life over to the care of God, the Eternal Father, and His Son, Jesus Christ. Some relatable phrases that I read in this week's reading was, when we took step 3, we faced the truth that recovery was far more the result of the Lord's efforts than our own. He worked the miracle when we invited him into our lives, and that was definitely the case for me. Last week, I mentioned I didn't know why it took as long as it did to get to our miracle. And in reflecting today, I realized I wasn't ready. I wasn't trusting God. I was still in the hiding phase, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't willing to seek. Once I decided to trust God, I simultaneously began to trust myself. I didn't want to do the work. I was too scared to face contention and face the hard parts of my life. I didn't want to do all of that. I just wanted all of that to disappear. Hence me running away from Sam. And so I guess I was still playing hide and seek with Sam, with myself, and with God. And that's why God never helped me. That's why I never got anywhere, because I had to get to that breaking point where I was so tired of it that I was done hiding it, and I was just ready for God to take it. That's when improvement happened. That's when I began to trust in God. Looking back, I see that I was not willing to give all of me to Sam, and that kept me broken. That kept us stuck. I honestly felt like my resentments were keeping me safe, were keeping Sam at a distance from me. As long as I kept him out of my heart, out of the true me, he couldn't hurt me. And so having that wall up to just keep him at a safe distance, I thought it was safe. I thought that was keeping our marriage alive, and it was smothering it. I knew that I wasn't giving Sam all of me, and I didn't think he deserved all of me. It was step 3 that God kind of intervened and provided a miracle to show me that intimacy wasn't the problem. The only way I would believe that was to have an experience where intimacy wasn't the problem. And then after that took place, I couldn't use that as my excuse anymore. In step 3, it was a decision to allow God to direct our lives. So just picking up where the story kind of ended last time, Sam and I were doing the six months of therapy. I gave you my version of what I was doing and what Sam was doing during the 6 months. He had moved down into the basement, and we kept separate. And I could handle Sam in family situations. Outside of family situations, I had no interest in hanging out with him and talking with him, because we would immediately go to heavy therapy talk. Like, our conversations were always so serious and so heavy. And then it was stressful on top of that already when we were doing our therapy sessions. And Sam was doing a lot of personal work himself. He started going to addiction recovery meetings. I wasn't at this time. This is before we were missionaries. And he was going to the meetings while he was in the basement. He was doing self-improvement things. He was making health changes. He kind of just snapped into a serious Sam mode. Sam has a very serious side, and this was a very serious personal reflection moment for him. I think he's referenced it as, or referred it to as, living in the dungeon. Like, he put himself in the hurt locker where he was facing all of his monsters. And I remember him telling the story, and remember hearing him say that he did a lot of fasting at this point. And step 3, fasting, is a big part of step 3 of, turning to God and then asking God for help and then trusting God. And in doing that, fasting is a good way of doing that. I think Sam said he I could check his journals, but he was fasting a lot, and he was fasting for me. And I wasn't fasting. I was not fasting for him. I wanted a fast from him. I wanted a break from him. And what took place here was I needed to feel accountable for my actions and my decisions. And I had a hard time feeling that with Sam, because there was a lot of codependency. We kind of got meshed in our relationship, where I didn't feel like I could make choices because the choices were affecting both of us. And so I didn't feel like I was allowed to have personal choices, because it would be like, well, no, we're married. And we struggled. I struggled with Sam in gaining my agency, where I needed to feel separate from him. I needed to feel like I mean, Adam and Eve both had their choices. And Satan tempted Adam separately, and he tempted Eve separately. And I didn't feel like there was a separate between us. And I didn't feel like I had a say in what I wanted, because we were one in marriage, and that was that. And I needed to break away. I needed to feel like I could say, no, I don't want to be married, instead of saying, well, no, we got married in the temple, and you're not going to break your covenants. I was stuck in this trap where I didn't even feel like I had a choice of anything. And I needed a physical break from Sam, and him moving into the basement. And then me separating him out of my life really helped me gain some autonomy. That was so important to me. And then the most important thing for me was feeling like I had sexual agency. I had never heard of that before. And when I heard the phrase sexual agency, it rang true to me. Like, I did not feel like I had sexual agency, and I needed to claim that. And never ever did I dare to claim that in our marriage, because I didn't think that was a thing, and I knew that would cause a problem. And so our marriage was more of resentment sex, duty sex, all of the wrong kind of sex, because I didn't feel like I had agency, and that was on me. That was my fault. I did not work to get it. I did not fight to get it. I did not communicate to get it. I gave it up. I gave up my agency. That was all on me. But at the time, it wasn't. At the time, I did not believe that or think that it was all Sam's fault. In hindsight, having gone through the 12 steps, I realized that is not Sam's fault. That was my fault. And at this point of our 6-month mark, right before we went to Vegas, I was claiming some sexual agency, because I was willing to lose our marriage for it. And that's why I never felt I dared claim it, because I thought I would lose our marriage if I was like putting my foot down. And what that would have looked like in the mess that we were in was no sex, and no husband wants to hear his wife say no sex. And I agree, that is not a marriage, but unfortunately that's where we were. I just didn't see that there were other options. I thought if I said I didn't want to have sex, that we would have a fight. And so I dealt with the fight and the resentments and continued to have sex. And that was such a poor choice, and our marriage suffered for that. Instead of having a healthy conversation with sexual agency. And so at this point, I don't care if I lose Sam, because losing Sam would mean losing sex, and I was all for that. And so at this point, right before Vegas, Sam does a temperature check. He wants to know what to expect on our Vegas trip. And this is when I tell him to get 2 beds, and I will go if you get 2 beds. And that broke his heart. He was hoping for a better trip than that, as I think I explained in the intro video. We had a therapy session right before we went, and our therapist asked, you know, with that temperature check, where are you? You know, are you all in? Are you, you know, Sam said he was all in, and my temperature check, I was cold, at lukewarm at best. I was out. But she said, okay, go have a good time, make your expectations clear, and have fun. And I packed for a fun adventure in Vegas, not romance. And Sam and I left at 5:30 in the morning for the airport, and the airport is 20 minutes away from our house, and we had already had a fight before we got to the airport. And then we board the plane. We're sitting next to each other. We don't touch. We don't talk. Sam falls asleep, and I dream of a better life. That's how we began our Vegas trip. I'm thinking when we get back, you know, things will get rolling on the divorce. And also our therapist asked me, Ember, what's your plan? Do you have an attorney? Do you have a place to live? What are you going to do? Like, she could see that I was like packing my bags ready to go, figuratively. And she was like, well, what's your plan? I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a plan because I was trusting God at this moment. And I was a little embarrassed when she asked me, you know, what was my plan, because she's like, okay, you're clearly wanting to end this marriage. What's your plan? And I'm like, I don't have a plan. And she didn't make me feel a certain way. I just realized as it came out of my mouth, I sounded foolish. Like I didn't have a plan. And so it's like, no, I want to leave. I want to be out of this marriage. But there was calm. I was always calm about it. There was no panic. There was no sense of urgency. God was telling me to wait. That was actually, I had to exercise patience to wait because I just wanted to run. So here we are going into Vegas. And once we landed in Vegas, it's like the wheels were in motion. Things were changing already. Part of our adventures was Sam got to pick something to do, and I picked an event to do. Now, we picked these events clear back in July. I said, I'll pick something and you pick something. And we're like, okay, we're going to make this fun. And Sam picked race car driving. And I picked skydiving. And to be honest, I didn't think we were going to be on this trip. I didn't think it was going to happen. Skydiving, the thought of that made my stomach turn, but I was like, okay, go big or go home. Like, this was our 23rd wedding anniversary, and I really kind of didn't think that we'd be doing it. So I chose skydiving. Sam chose race car driving, and that was the first thing that we had planned that day. And we got off the plane and went straight there. And Sam was dressed in his church clothes, his Sunday best. He wore that on the flight because we had a temple appointment after the race car driving, and to pack his suit was going to make it all wrinkled and whatnot. He decided to wear it because it was going to be easier to just wear it, and then we were going to go straight to the temple. So we show up to the race car place. I don't even know what it's called. It's just outside of Vegas. They put us in this like holding room, and have the video kind of showing you what's going to take place. And I am the only female in this room, full of probably about 20 other men. And Sam is looking good. He is in a suit, a blue suit. Okay, he's looking good. And it's not until we get into this room, I'm the only female full of these grown men in this room, and it is like little boys at the playground. They are all giddy, and I want to claim Sam. I want to make it known that I am with him. And what it looks like from the outside is more that maybe we're on a first date or something. There's that awkward air between us, but we're, you know, it was awkward for me because all of a sudden I want Sam to protect me. I didn't feel threatened, but I wanted Sam to, what did I want from him? It was interesting. In a room full of men, being the only woman totally in their world of testosterone, I found I wanted to flirt with Sam. I wanted to make it known to the men that I was with Sam. I need to think about that a little bit of why that was. That's an that's a deeper dive I could probably go into. But I sat next to Sam and I wanted to be touching legs. I was drawn to him. I wanted him. This is where some energy kind of came alive, with kind of sparked again, here in this waiting room. And in the waiting room, a spark lit again between us. And it was interesting because we were fighting earlier that day. And it took me being in a room full of men to gravitate, to want, to desire Sam again. And then it kind of became fun. I wanted to flirt with him. And because of our absence of physical touch for basically a year, it was a year, I never felt safe to flirt with him. I didn't want to. I didn't want that at all. But here I am, and I did. I wanted to touch him. I wanted to be close to him. And the fun began. This is where our Vegas miracle began. It started here, and but not before it got a little ugly. It was our turn to take a warm-up lap where we sat with a driver and went through the course, and just to get a feel of what the racetrack was like. And I sat in the back seat, and that was a bad idea because I get motion sickness so easily. And I think it was because we had just came off an airplane and then went right to the tracks, and then getting in a race car and going around the track. I got sick on the first lap, and I didn't say anything because I was like, maybe it's just because I'm sitting in the back seat. And normally when I get car sick all the time, but if I'm driving, I don't get car sick. So I was thinking I'll just keep quiet about it. And then when I drive, I'll be okay. But it was bad. It was really bad that when we got out of just the warm up lap, I was trying to breathe. I was so sick. I was so sick, but then they called my next driver, and so then I had to jump right into a race car that I was driving. Now, I'm all about race cars. I'm not a car person, but I like to drive fast.
Yeah. Here you are coming in. Beautiful. Apex, beautiful. Way to clip it. Yes.
And I thought this was going to be fun. I wasn't intimidated. I was willing to put the pedal to the metal. I was ready to race. It was going to be fun. And so Sam couldn't ride with me in the car, so he was waiting, and I was with this professional driver and his amazing, and I don't even remember what kind of car it is. It was a cool car. It was a fast race car. And first lap, I'm done. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't even care. I'm going to throw up. But I'm trying, I had to just stuff it and keep going. And he was egging me on. And after lap 3, I was so sick. And then lap 4, it wasn't even fun anymore. And lap 5, I'm just like, are we done yet? And we got 7 laps, but at 6, I was like, I've got to stop. I was so sick. And I was going to throw up in his car. I'm like, I need to get out. And so we stopped a lap short. And I got out of the car, could not get out of the car fast enough. I was so sick and almost threw up in his car. And just opened the door and flopped onto the floor outside. I was trying to catch my breath. I was so sick. This was not good. And Sam came running over, and he was, for a guy who everything he did for the prior year rubbed me the wrong way and I hated, he did everything right. Suddenly his touch was comforting. He was into me. He was concerned, but it was just perfect. But the timing was bad again, and they called, his name was called over the intercom to go. It was his turn to race, and I can't even stand up yet. I'm on the floor trying to breathe and trying to look around for a garbage can to go throw up in. And but they call him again, last call, and so I tell him to go, I'll be fine. And he hands me his phone and tells me, and I tell him I'm going to record it. I'm like, I'll go up on the balcony and I'll record him driving. And I look like, I don't know, a drunk. I don't know what I look like, but I could hardly walk. And then the smell of exhaust and gasoline and the heat in Vegas, it was a bad recipe of misery for me. And I couldn't even watch him race because of the movement, the motion of watching and just hearing the engines. It sent me, I have never been so ill in my life, never been so helpless and sick. It hurt to open my eyes. It hurt to be alive. I managed to record. I think I just aimed his phone at the direction because it was so hard for me to watch. And it took 2 hours for me to recover. I found a bench and lay there for 2 hours before I could stand up and even walk straight. So I got slammed with, and it was all motion sickness. It wasn't that I ate anything. This was purely just my gift of not being, since I was a kid, my mom said I cried all the time when we were in the car. And then once I got older and could talk, it's because car sick, that's something I have to deal with all the time. So if I'm driving and I'm in control, usually I don't get it so bad. But this was the case in Vegas. And after the 2 hours of even popping a bunch of Dramamine to try to counteract it, we decided to an early check-in to our hotel so that I could sleep. And we didn't end up going to the temple. And yeah, we hit the hotel and I was out. I was out for the evening. And it was a beautiful hotel, and we had things planned, but I wasn't able to move. I had to take a big time out. Sam had booked us a room at the hotel where Carrie Underwood was giving her concert. We were on the 65th floor. It was a beautiful hotel. When we walked in, the shades, the windows, the whole length of the floor, the shades automatically opened up, and we were facing, I think it was east. We could see the temple it was way far away. But yeah, we walk in and I'm like, yeah, we're not going to the temple. So here we are again in Vegas. This is where we started our marriage. Our honeymoon was in Vegas. And here we are 23 years later in a do-over of sorts that turned out to be a literal marriage do-over. It was a marriage rebirth. We started in the same place, and it was different because I showed up at this event, this honeymoon of sorts, with my sexual agency intact. I was aware of it and I was responsible for it, and I was responsible for my agency, my choices in marriage. I think I went into our marriage, our first marriage, just like ready to be one in everything. I'm just meshed, where codependency and unhealthy things just transpired in that. When this time I was very much aware of what I liked and didn't like, and what I needed to be responsible for, what I wanted to own as part of an individual of myself, and what I wanted, what kind of wife I wanted to be, what kind of woman I wanted to be. And being in Vegas with Sam this time, I was a different person. It felt like I was with a different person. It felt like I had left my marriage and was on a honeymoon with a complete different man. And Sam said it felt the same for him. And it was a really cool experience to be the same people, but be a mystery to each other. Like, it was we were nervous around each other again. We were the vibes were just like we were newly married, newly married, like haven't consummated the marriage yet, newly married. That excitement, that fire, that spark was definitely between us. I felt like I was finally happy with my sexual agency and my part in our marriage at the 6-month mark. And I thought I was happy because I had separated myself from Sam and I was getting the breathing space that I needed. But in reality, it wasn't because I was pushing Sam away. It was because I was becoming more me. I had given myself permission to change and to be accountable for my change and my decisions. And the frustrating thing right up front, when I told Sam that I needed professional help to live with him and that I wanted to divorce, when I was like, yeah, I want things to change, is I didn't feel like I even had agency to make my own choice. I didn't feel like I had a say in our marriage because I felt stuck. I felt stuck everywhere I turned. I felt stuck because I had made covenants, and so I felt stuck by my temple marriage. But what I needed was some agency. I needed to recognize and then believe that, yes, I was married in the temple and I made covenants with God. And I needed to believe that, yes, I could break those if I wanted to. Like, I didn't even allow myself to ever think that, because my mind was saying, I made covenants with God. I'm not going to break them. And there was so much freedom in me deciding I made covenants with God and I can break them if I wanted to. Like, how I was viewing it was trapping me. I was like, this is Satan. This is Satan's plan. I made covenants to God and I'm going to keep them. There's no breaking them. I'm going to keep them. I'm going to stay in this miserable marriage. And because that's how it is. I made covenants with God. I'm sticking to it. And that's where I was for the 23 years. And then I feel like God's plan, this agency, is I made covenants. I married Sam in the temple and I made covenants to God that I would stay in this marriage and I will keep my covenants. I can choose to keep those covenants or I can choose to break them. That was amazing to me because I didn't feel like I had a choice in that. I felt like I was stuck in it. And all I needed was the choice, and it was me who discovered it. I just needed to decide, hey, wait a minute, I do have a say in this. And that was a beautiful day. The day that I decided I could break my covenants if I wanted to. And then I had the hard conversation with myself. Do I want to? Yeah, you know what? I don't want to break my covenants with God. I am going to keep my covenants with God. And now this is what I have to deal with. And like, see the difference there? Satan's plan, I'm going to force them to, nobody's going to disobey. Everybody's going to be obedient. I was stuck there, and it felt stuck. It felt heavy. And I broke away from that, and I told Sam, no, I can choose to break my covenants. I get to choose that. And that scared him. He did not like that. He was scared that I was going to break my covenants, and he had no control over that. He had to let me choose. And this was where we had a great breakthrough in our marriage. Was Sam is not controlling me and my covenants and my decisions. And I needed to come to grips with that and realize I get to decide. And Sam's not going to decide for me. Even though Sam and I are married and he is the other half in our relationship, I still have a say. And I think I might not. I just needed to entertain that thought. I needed to feel that freedom. I needed to feel that freedom, and freedom it was. That was so huge. I gained my agency, and along with that, I gained my sexual agency. That was a game changer for me to recognize, hey, I have a say in my sexuality and when I want to give of myself and when I don't. But I couldn't get to that point until I cut myself off from it. I didn't want anything to do with Sam. I headed down the road of, we are getting a divorce and you are not touching me. And he moved downstairs. It was, because I felt trapped, I felt smothered by our marriage, by him, by his sexuality. I felt trapped in all of it, and I needed to break away from it to get a clearer look of what it was, and then realize I do have a choice, and then make my choices from there. And then I became a different person. Once I discovered that I have a say in my sexuality became more fun. I was like, okay, let's tap into this. Who am I? What is my sexuality like? Who is the sexual Ember? And I was tapping into that for me, not for Sam, not for anyone else but me. Like, once I claimed my sexuality, it was fun. Like, I suppressed that. I stomped that out so quickly and would not allow, it was not Sam's to have. I was hiding it. I didn't want to express it. I didn't even know. I suppressed that part of me. That was part of me that I suppressed, thinking I was protecting. And it was safe for me to let that out and develop my sexuality, and then choose to offer it to Sam. And so when we were in Vegas, we both showed up very different sexual beings, because there was, a good chunk of that 6 months of us reevaluating our sexuality. Sam in his sexuality, me in my sexuality. I even took some female sexuality courses that was so helpful for me to dig into my suppressed feeling. I needed to tap into that part of me in a safe way, and for me to discover, not to please my husband or to perform. And that was a cool experience. So that contributed to a lot to a new rebirth in our marriage in Vegas, showing up as a complete different person. But like I said, I packed for adventure for Vegas, was not thinking romance at all. That kind of backfired on me. There's a lot more to the story, but I'm just going to tie it up right here, in that trusting God wasn't hard for me, because he led me along the way. He was asking hard things but he was providing the way all along. And so, each day with Vegas was a little nibble of trust each other again, where God was putting us in the situation to trust each other again. And like I said before, God sees around corners, and when you're trusting him, you're going to be okay. And it was not what I expected. It's not what I packed for. It's not what I planned for. God just kept placing us in these learning situations. And the story continues, but I've got to end there. Okay, so step 3, trusting in God. Things started, God was showing me that things could be different. God was showing me a new marriage down a new path and a new sexuality in both me and Sam. And I will get into more of the details as we go. Next week is step 4, which is truth, and it's talking about writing fearless moral inventory of yourself. So that's when we came home from Vegas, and this is when I had to put the mirror up to my face and see my problems and what that looked like and what I did, because I've already kind of given you a little bit of that story, but it builds on each week. It will build on a little bit more, but that's where I'll wrap up in trusting God. Trust God in your situation. If you give your heart to him and you're done playing hide and seek, and you're willing to step into more of the seeking role with God, seeking what he wants for you in your life. Because before going to Vegas, if I would have, God would have said, hey, let's go to Vegas and start your marriage again, I wouldn't sign up for that. No, thank you. It was step by step. Nothing came too early, and everything was measured perfectly. And the story unfolds into a beautiful story. So, okay, I had to break for a minute to take my kids to their ninja class, and it gets dark so fast. So change of scenery, but I wanted to jump back in here, and I'm glad I had that break to reflect a little bit, because it reminded me that I wanted to talk about the other side of this with Sam, maybe Sam's perspective on it. What Sam was hearing in our therapy sessions was a huge shock, because he is hearing I am venting my resentments that I have kept in for years. And so this is a total shock to him. Things are starting to make sense, because now he's starting to understand why I am so distant from him, why I am not matching his enthusiasm with sex. There was so much unknown to him, which wasn't fair to him, because I was punishing him. I said this before. I was punishing him for his sexuality, when that wasn't fair. That was my sexuality. I was punishing him for my sexuality. But we did a podcast together, and he did express, in some other places, he did express that he was finally getting some answers to things that he couldn't get answers to, things that I wouldn't talk about, things that he could tell were wrong, but we just never knew how. We didn't know. We couldn't fight healthy. We would get so off track, because he is very aggressive, and then I would get so lost in our arguments that we would go all over the place, and we would always end up hurting each other more in arguments. They were never productive. That's why I said I needed professional help to live with him. I knew I needed not so much a cheerleader, a referee. And we found that in our marriage therapist. She was a perfect fit for both of us. I know a lot of couples have a hard time finding a therapist that works for both of the partners, and she was just what I needed, and she was just what Sam needed, and she was what I needed her to be for Sam. So she was a godsend. She was very helpful to us in getting the hard conversations, getting to my resentments. I needed this help. And then once we got all of that done, we were able to manage it on our own, but we needed that help. And so this experience for Sam was learning all of the things that I wasn't telling him, all of the kind of getting an explanation for my behavior. But the sad thing is he did not know how unhappy I was. And so for the 6 months, like I said, he moved down into the basement and we kind of lived separate lives. And I liked the changes that Sam was making. He was making a lot of personal life changes in that he was stepping up as a dad. And he was so engaged. We had a new baby at this time, and then a 4-year-old, and then, our other 5 kids, or our other 4 kids. And when he was down in the basement, it was almost like we were separated and taking, what do they call it when the parents take turns with their kids? I'm drawing a blank. Divorced kids with the time. It felt like that. He was stepping up as a father, and like I read in my journal entry in the my last video, is I felt like he was faking. I felt like he was just acting like all of a sudden now he was going to be this great dad. He really was. He was being a great dad. He was being a better dad in so many ways. And I loved it that he was being that for the kids. I didn't love it for me. I was like, you be you, fine, go be a great dad, be a great dad. I love that for the kids, but don't be a great dad for me. And like I said, he was attending the 12 steps, these meetings online, and he was doing it to uncover he knew that our issues were heavy around sexuality. And things were starting to make sense in that, okay, Ember and I are at different experiences, which again was good to have something to start with, but he dove right in of what was wrong with, why were we incompatible? What was happening? What was wrong with him? What was wrong with me? What was wrong with our sexuality? And he was doing the 12 steps to uncover any unresolved sexual sins that he had, lingering. How did he explain it in the podcast? Lingering sexual sins or something. Like he was ripping the Band-Aid off. He wanted to figure out what his fault in our relationship was. And I loved that for him, but I did not care because I was done with him. I did not care. And he was, claiming to be making all these changes. And I was like, bravo, go for it. Leave me out of it. He was reading sexuality books. And I don't mean porn magazines. He was reading, helpful books to understand women and their sexuality. He was studying all the time. And like I said, he would take the kids to the park. He would make dinner. He would clean around the house. He was doing things that he would never do around the house. And like, he was stepping up in so many ways. And I hated it. I thought I saw right through it. I was like, whatever, don't do it for me. Don't do it for me because I don't want to love you. I was so past it. I've lived with you for 23 years. You've behaved a certain way for 23 years. If you want to turn around and all of a sudden be Mr. Nice Guy and Mr. Fix It and Mr. Chef and Mr. Babysitter, fine, do it. Do it for the kids. Don't do it for me. And he did. And he realized when he was down in his dungeon that he decided that he got to decide what kind of husband he wanted to be. His part in repairing the marriage is he let go of his old self, and he wasn't happy with some parts of his self, and he decided that he was going to be the kind of man he wanted to be regardless of how I responded. He didn't care if I loved him more for it or didn't. But that hasn't always been the case. But he, in his explanation in the podcast, was that unfolded to him is that he finally started doing things because he wanted to, and that's the kind of person that he wanted to be. He wanted to love me a certain way, so he was going to love me that way regardless of how I responded to him. And that was awesome, because in the end it worked. it worked out. But I did have a problem with, all of a sudden, Mr. Nice Guy. He was, do it all, everything. And it made me mad, because I thought he was just doing it to, get the points or whatever. But he actually was doing it because he was having a change of heart, and he wanted to be the kind of person that he decided he wanted to be, instead of the kind of person he felt I deserved or didn't deserve. So that character improvement, I did see him work hard at. And for the most part, our sessions were heavy on him. They were hard on him because I was raw. I was showing up each time saying, I'm not interested, I want out. And he kept trying. And once we had that breakthrough, like I'm honestly telling you, when he realized he could not influence my decision, that I could choose to leave, and that was that. That I remember we had a real conflict in that moment, where it was almost like, I felt like he was telling me I couldn't divorce him because of our covenants. And I'm so glad that was the way that it kind of unfolded, because I didn't understand that this was an issue, that I felt trapped, until he literally was, trying to use our covenants as reasons why we couldn't get divorced. And that was it. I was like, no, I have agency. And then I discovered I needed to tap into my agency. And yes, I had agency to choose whether or not I wanted to break my covenants. And then, so he was experiencing that he had agency to decide what kind of husband that he wanted to be, regardless of whether or not he was getting sex from his wife, or whether or not he had a great sex life. It's like his behavior, he was treating me a certain way because of the way I was treating him. And we got caught up in that. And once we both separately, when we were literally living on separate ends of the house, decided that we needed to decide who we were and who we were going to be to each other. And it didn't matter. He just made up his mind. He didn't care how I was going to treat him. He was going to treat me a certain way, the way that he wanted to, that he felt was what he felt. He was going to love me the way he felt he wanted to love me. And it wasn't always the way I deserved to be loved. And then Vegas happened. And so I have another story from Vegas that I'll share next week about me recognizing all the hate that I threw to Sam. So up to this point, trusting God looked like waiting when I wanted to run. And during that time, it didn't make sense that I wouldn't have an exit plan. But I didn't feel like there was a need for an exit plan. God just told me to wait, and I just trusted that it would work out. And I see this pattern in our marriage, that things don't make sense, but if I'm following God, that's where things are peaceful. Doesn't always make sense, but it's peaceful. It's not chaotic. It's not causing me anxiety in any way. It's just peaceful. I had to work on my patience. My patience was tested because I wanted action. I wanted results. But now in hindsight, like, God was giving Sam and I an opportunity to develop ourselves so that we could be different people when we came together. For me, that looked like I was leaving him. It took me thinking that I was leaving him to gain my independence and my agency and my autonomy to stand up and be the wife that I never was to Sam, because I felt like I was under his thumb all the time. And he was that was disappointing to him, that I would always wait for him, I wait for him to initiate things, or wait for him to approve things. I kind of just put myself in a submissive personality, which isn't me. That's why I was so miserable. It was like, I was always like, how did I get here? How did I get here? I am not happy. And trusting God just led me to find the better version of me, the better version of Sam. So yeah, so that's where we were. Sam was going through a similar self-improvement down in the basement. And that's what I love about the 12-step program, is it is about you and your problems and you and your relationship with God. Like, if you're codependent on somebody, they're not going to do these steps for you. It forces you to stay in your lane, to take a look in the mirror at yourself. There's nowhere in these action steps where it wants you to point the finger at somebody else and put the blame somewhere else. It's all back on you. And so it makes sense that Sam was doing the 12 steps and he stopped. Sam was doing the 12 steps and he was looking for every crack in his armor. It was about him. He wanted to figure out what he was doing wrong. It wasn't, he gave up on trying to convince me to stay in the marriage. He gave up on that. And that was the best thing for us. Once I felt I broke free from him just trying to keep our marriage together, he was trying so hard. And it backfired. It made me want to get away more, because I just felt like I was being smothered and I wanted my agency. And I just didn't feel like I had that. And he shifted. And when he let go of that tight grip on me, I flourished. And I just felt safe I needed that safety. When Sam turned and started focusing on himself, progress really started to happen between both of us. Because this isn't a blaming program. This is all about you. One place where I thought I saw Sam struggling was in controlling our marriage and keeping it together. Like, he was doing everything he could to not get divorced. And but he doesn't have 100% control over our marriage. He has 50% control over it, and I have 50% control over it. And when we both became accountable for our half of the marriage is when we became whole again. We came together because I was drawn to him when I didn't feel like he was clawing me, when he was hanging on, which I wouldn't have said that was, I would not have identified that as a problem until the relief of it, when it was lifted, when I finally felt him let me make the choice, when he finally came to the realization that I may or may not stay, and there was nothing he could do about it. Like, that was my choice. I keep saying that. I needed that. I needed to feel that I had that choice. Agency is so important in relationships. Agency is so important, which kind of seems counterintuitive. Like, agency in a relationship makes the relationship whole. And more secure, when maybe, controlling one person, having more control over the other, it didn't work for us. So when we showed up in Vegas as these two different people to each other, me showing up in my sexual agency and Sam showing up in him, and just it was a different air between us. Sam was a mystery to me. I didn't feel like he was controlling me. I didn't feel like he was better than me. I just felt like he was intriguing. I was so drawn to him because I had the agency to be. Like, flirting, I wanted to flirt with him. I wanted to touch him and be close to him. I wanted the other men in the room to know I was with him. It was such a surprising and refreshing, it was an unexpected turn in our relationship. Something ignited that day, and I was drawn to Sam. I've always been attracted to Sam, but I put up walls and I shut down so much of loving him because I felt it would always just be taken away from me. There was an expectation. Sam knew that there was not going to be sex. When sex was taken off the table, like, that's what he expected. He expected to sleep in his separate bed, and for the whole trip, don't touch me. I mean, I made my expectations clear up front, and something about that opened up for a whole lot of improvement, a whole lot of play. I didn't feel obligated for anything. None of that was there. And so it left room for so much of my creativity to come out and flirt with Sam, and I guess for us to just experience each other. It was wild. It was wild what Vegas was like. That was so weird. That concludes this video. I just wanted to throw that in, that perspective of Sam on the other side, what he was doing on the other side of what I was doing. And next week, the other side aspect of our story comes into play. I'll introduce it, where that came from, and it comes from Vegas day 2, and it makes a beautiful story and made a big difference in how things played out in Vegas. And so check back in with me next week on step 4. Thanks for watching.